Cosplay. We all love it, we've all done it, and if you were an embarrassing teenager during the Homestuck days, you know there is no limitations to when and where it can be worn. Sides of highways? Yes. Weddings? Yes. With Santa Claus? Hell yes. But have you ever worn cosplay to court? Welcome to Track Record. I'm your host Rebecca, and today we're going to be talking about that time a Star Trek fan served on a jury in full uniform. So there is a fair shot that some of you watching this are not American, which I do ask. The Jersey accent is already grating enough for most Americans, plus the speech impediment. Like, if you're British, what do you think is being said here? Anyway, while I know other countries have jury duty, let me give you the rundown of how it works in the US. Basically, and keep in mind, I'm an archaeologist here, the way our legal system fills up juries, the people who hear the evidence and decide the outcome in legal proceedings, is by randomly selecting people who live in the district. You get a letter saying that you've been selected, and then you show up to the courthouse for a brief interview with the attorney where they determine if you have any conflicts of interest that could bias your decision. From there, you can be dismissed or approved, as where you'll continue to sit and proceed on the case. Okay, that's the end of the civics lesson, I promise. It is, however, the beginning of the history lesson. Welcome to Crash Course. In 1996, this guy Bill Clinton was president. I'm sure you've never heard of him. He had a pretty quiet time in office, but somewhere in the 90s, Bill, his wife Hillary, and some other people invested in an Arkansas-based real estate corporation that tanked, costing them over $40,000. The owners of this corporation, called Whitewater, had also been involved in another failed venture, and an insurance investigator, L. Jean Lewis, began to investigate the situation for fraud. Neither Clinton was ever brought to trial, though they were in talks to be called to testify. Instead, Clinton's successor for Arkansas Governor, Jim Guy Tucker, real name, was charged with fraud, and he was the guy brought to trial because I'm 23 and it's been a while since A-Push, and therefore I don't remember. I'm sorry. So the Whitewater scandal was a pretty big deal now. Certainly, 1996 would have the biggest scandal of this presidency. No way a guy like Bill would fuck up again. All eyes were on this case, which made selecting a jury a very cautious ordeal. Which brings us to the woman of the hour.
My name is Lieutenant Commander Barbara Adams. I'm commanding officer of the USS Artemis, which is the Little Rock unit of the Federation Alliance.
So, the International Federation of Trekkies, or the Alliance, is an officially syndicated group of Trekkies that focus on environmental issues, the logistics of space exploration, and community service. It's a lot like other fan clubs, but it puts more emphasis on practicing the ideals of Starfleet, like building functioning communities and practicing ethical science. Barbara Adams was a big figure in the Arkansas chapter of the Federation, as both the head of the unit and a frequent organizer of community events. As she was also a resident in the district of the trial, she was called to serve on the jury of the Tucker case, and felt it was her responsibility to do so. When accepting the position, she made the choice to wear her Star Trek uniform. The biggest question on your mind right now is probably, why did she do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, she wanted to make it clear that being a fan was not something to be ashamed of.
You can put on a uniform for football year-round, nobody cares. Basketball year-round, nobody cares. Put on a Star Trek uniform, people get a case of the giggles. I don't want my officers to ever feel ashamed to wear their uniform.
2, she felt the uniform of Starfleet represented the ideals of a good juror. That word is hell for me.
Basically, the philosophy behind Star Trek that she is so promoting is the philosophy behind an honest juror.
And 3, she wanted to spread the ideals of the Federation Alliance. She wanted to spread the message that service to the community was important and is what would lead us into the Star Trek future. And I would argue she accomplished all of these. She became somewhat of a celebrity with her wearing the uniform, reporters obviously flocking to document her coming in and leaving the courthouse every day, in a way spreading her message. That's not to say Adams didn't receive some backlash, however. Many Trekkies felt embarrassed by her choice, feeling it gave the rest of them a bad name. Much of the critique was very gendered and pointed. You know, what a crazy woman she is. She's too old to be doing this. She must be very lonely living in a fantasy world. This woman needs psychological care. Frankly, I don't agree with any of these people. I'm not saying that I would ever wear cosplay to court. I'm the kind of person who dresses like Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park from day to day anyway, so all of my clothes are a bit of costume. Nor am I saying I completely agree with her doing this. Honestly, I don't really have much of an opinion on the social rightness of this, mostly because I have complicated feelings about the court system, but that's another conversation. But fundamentally, it is her right to dress however she wants. People have worn much dumber things to much more serious occasions, and frankly, the insistence that she has to be crazy to do this is ableist and an overreaction. Tons of people agree with me too, pointing out that all she did was wear a Starfleet uniform in public and people were claiming she needed professional help. Also saying the double standard of nerds supposed to be accepting of eccentricities.
Based on the ideals of Star Trek, yeah, I think she'd be an asset.
This is what she wants to do. This is America. I mean, we should be able to do what we want to do. You know, look how we want to look.
So while I think she didn't do anything wrong, the court system did disagree with me. In their defense, she did communicate with reporters, not about the case, but instead about herself and her decision, which is a violation of the rules, and she was ultimately dismissed as a juror. Tucker was ultimately convicted by the remaining jurors, and Bill moved on from the scandal and never did anything morally wrong in his life ever again.
Biggest news, shortly before 1:30 this afternoon, President Clinton was impeached.
Fuck. Directly after this, Bobo was skyrocketed into big-name fan status, with tons of people getting her autograph at cons and idealizing her. There's not a ton of information out there, but I can't find any proof of anyone harassing her directly, though I'm nearly certain someone did. As far as I can tell, Bobo is still part of the Star Trek fandom in some capacity, though I can't confirm if she still attends cons or other fan spots. I did find somebody talking about seeing her in 2014, which horrifies me to realize that was 7 years ago. I hope wherever she is, she's doing well. Regardless of if you think she was silly for wearing that uniform or not, I think it takes a pretty tenacious person to do so, and frankly, she seems like a really cool lady who's super dedicated to her community.
I think she's a pretty neat lady to have the guts to kind of be herself, even on an important thing like being a juror.
Honestly, I would love to hang out with her and pick her brain about Star Trek and civic duty and also where she gets her haircut, because I really like it.
It was the bus driver that I already met. He kept asking me, what are you going to do? Why do you keep wearing the uniform? What are you going to do if the president comes down to testify? And I said, I'll wear my uniform. He said, but it's the president of the United States. I'll wear my uniform. We came to a stoplight. He turned around and he looked at me. He said, you are a brave woman.
Alright, so that was this week's video about Barbara Adams, who is really a hardcore lady, and I think we all could use a little bit of her stick-it-to-itness. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below, but remember that Barbara is a real person. This one action does not define her entire life, and not only did she do a ton for the fan community, but a ton for her general Arkansas community as well, and generally seems like a really cool chick, so don't be a dick. As always, let me know if there are any fan stories that you would like me to talk about, and until then, live long, and I will see you at Quarks.